Hi everyone, this is our channel, Meet the Real Story. Please like, share and subscribe.
I don't follow the news much. International crisis, crimes, kidnapping, all these things just fill me with dismay. It's as if our world is a dangerous jungle. And I don't like that feeling, because I'm a peaceful girl who likes to avoid trouble. Little did I know that my peaceful world was going to be shaken by one of these sad events. I'm Marcia, and I'm 18 years old. I live with my parents and my little sister Marilyn. My mother often warned me to be alert and avoid dangerous situations. She told me that peaceful people can live in a peaceful world if they choose to do so, but that wasn't entirely true. I was at a friend's birthday party once, and we were laughing, eating, playing, and having a great time. I wasn't paying attention to my phone much, but when I chanced to look at it, I saw that Mom had called me over 1,000,000 times around midnight. She was clearly worried about me being out so late, so I decided that I needed to rush home. I was afraid to take a taxi alone, but I needed to hurry home, so I walked out to the main street, which was very dimly lit, and saw a taxi nearby. But when I got closer to it, I saw that all its windows were tinted, and I didn't feel at ease. I made to look for another one, but then the taxi driver opened the front door and smiled. His elderly age and his friendly smile disarmed me and gave me a lulling sense of security. So I asked him to take me to my home, and I jumped into the back seat. He asked me why I was walking alone on a dimly lit street that late at night, and I told him about the party and my losing track of time. He warned me not to walk late at night again, because that was a dangerous time to be about. He asked me if I had heard about the serial killer named Bradley. I said that I did, but that I didn't know what he looked like. At that point, he laughed, and I heard the 4 doors suddenly lock themselves. He looked at me and said, "My name is Bradley. Now you know what I look like. It's so nice to meet you." I screamed for him to stop the taxi and let me out. He stated simply that the simple mistakes can have the largest impact on our lives sometimes. He boasted that I would be a perfect addition to complete his skull collection. In a panic, I grabbed his seatbelt and began strangling him with it. I demanded that he stop the car, but he refused. I began choking him harder and harder until he eventually lost control of the car. The car careened off the road, flipped a few times, and landed upside down. Luckily, I was still conscious and was able to get out of the overturned car. He tried to grab me as I was crawling out, but I managed to escape. I ran back up the main road and flagged a car carrying a family in it. Once I reached home, I relayed my horrendous experience to Mom, and she took me to the police station. After listening to my story and my description of the guy, the police promised to investigate and to catch the criminal as soon as possible. That experience scarred me for life, but I know now that I have to be strong if I am to live on. Some days later, I received a message from an anonymous sender that said, "Be ready for the next ramble. You haven't seen the last of me yet."
Scientists once documented a case where a person slept for 32 hours straight. Quite a record. When he woke up from his deep sleep, he suffered from a temporary balance problem. Imagine what it would be like to awake after sleeping for 10 years straight. My name is Frederick. My wife Alexandria and I have 2 kids, Tom and Cheryl. I met Alexandria during college, and we fell in love with each other. We graduated from college and I began building my career from scratch, with Alexandria helping and supporting me the whole way. In the beginning, we were a poor family. After we got married, we had our 2 kids. We lived in a small apartment, but later moved into a bigger one as I worked on achieving my dreams with Alexandria at my side. We endured numerous successes and failures, but she never gave up on me or lost faith in me. I am now the owner of a large contracting company. I was lucky to achieve my dream, but life sure didn't help me much. My life suffered an upset one day when I traveled to another city to do some business. The business concluded satisfactorily, and I began the long drive home. During the return trip, one of my rear tires blew out, causing me to lose control of the car. As the car was rolling over and over, my life flashed through my mind. I thought of my family and quickly prayed that I would see them again. I got banged up pretty badly and lost consciousness. I had interminable slow-motion dreams about my life, including reliving the scene when Alexandria and I first met. I felt as if I were slowly sinking deeper and deeper into the bottomless, darkening ocean depths. It felt as if someone was tugging at me and trying to pull me upwards towards the surface. I could hear voices, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. Suddenly, I opened my eyes and heard a repetitive beeping noise. It was coming from the oscilloscope next to my bed. It was my heartbeat, apparently. I found it rather annoying. Then a nurse flitted to my bedside, saying, "He's awake! He's awake!" Then she rushed off and came back with the doctor in tow. She seemed happy to see me awake. What was the big deal about waking up? The doctor did the usual general health checks of my eyes, lungs, heartbeat, pulse, blood pressure, ears, and throat. Then he asked the nurse to call my family. When Alexandria, Tom, and Cheryl walked into the room, my jaw dropped in shock. They looked like they had aged about 10 years. In response to my query about what the heck was going on, the doctor proceeded to tell me that I had been in a coma for 10 years, that the hospital wanted to take me off life support and let me pass on, and that Alexandria had staunchly refused to give up hope for my eventual recovery. My mind couldn't really accept the reality that I had actually been asleep for 10 years, but all doubts vanished when I left the hospital and stepped into the outside world. It was so strange looking compared to what I had known. I was thinking that it would take me a long time to catch up with all the changes in the world over the past 10 years. I wouldn't recommend that anyone ever sleep for 10 years.
Looking back, I realized that I was raised in a very strange world. At the center of that world was my mother, who was single, addicted to heroin, and, at least to me, the best mom in the world. Every day there would be a moment where she would tell me, "I'll be there in a second," before disappearing into her bedroom with a few of her friends and locking the door. As a 7-year-old, I would stand by that locked door for ages, trying to imagine what was happening on the other side. It took me years to finally figure out what they were doing in there. For a long time, I assumed that adults were having some sort of a power nap. They emerged from that room so quiet, so relaxed, and so cheerful. I felt like I was missing out because even after nights that I had had a full night's sleep, I was still tired. I wanted to be an explorer when I grew up, which I knew would require lots of energy. My mother had an enormous amount of love to give, and most of it went to me. We would play together every day, for hours. We would dream up adventures together. I was Link, she was Zelda, and our mission was to defeat the evil demon that lived around the corner from our home in Western Austria. First, we had to secure a map so we could locate the demon and destroy him. If my mother became too tired for our mission, she had to drink a potion made from poppy pods to regain her strength. My mom usually had a bunch of her friends over at her place, like Werner, who told me that he drew his energy from nature and trees. Werner always told me about the glory days of the Austria Football Club, while my mother's boyfriend, Adam, taught me to play chess when I was 6 years old. He'd learned to play during a stint in prison. Probably the only straight-faced lie my mother ever told me was that my dad had died in a car accident before I was born. Only years later, when she and Adam were clean, did they explain that my biological father had died of a heroin overdose. After a few months in prison for possession, he had taken his usual dose, but his tolerance had fallen while he was inside, and it proved to be too much. In her grief, my pregnant mother considered suicide, but a book she read convinced her that she would be reincarnated as the lowest form of life if she did so. At school, I was a bit of a problem child, rude and badly behaved. Though that was basically the norm when I grew up. We lived in a big green ground floor apartment in an apartment block. We didn't trust anyone who bothered knocking on the main door since only the police or the postman did so. For me, they were the same thing.
Everyone just clambered over the balcony and walked directly into our living room. A frequent visitor was my mother's dealer, who was called the Greek. Once, while my mom was in her bedroom, the Greek forced me to drink a shot with him. I was only 7 at the time. When my mother found out, she kicked him out of the house. But as she would later explain to me, everyone deserves a second chance. So she eventually let him come back. In the summer of 1999, when I was 8, my mother was really struggling with her drug use. Adam seemed near death after 23 years of addiction, and I was slowly beginning to understand what was going on around me. My mother had convinced herself that it was fine to take drugs until I was old enough to figure out what she was doing. But obviously, the truth was, she just couldn't stop. One day that same year, her old friend Mike came to visit. He had been in prison with Adam for smuggling. It was like he was a completely different person. He wasn't tired, dizzy, or nervous. He radiated a joy and peace that immediately made my mother cry. Mike comforted her and spoke about how he had healed and was set free. His presence alone lit up our dark apartment. It was like someone was shining a torch in a pitch-black cave. Adam kicked him out of the apartment before smashing up some furniture and screaming that he didn't want anything to do with Mike. But Mike came back to explain again how he had freed himself from addiction. Sometime after that, my mom and Adam came to see Mike's new life as a good thing. And the realization helped them both. Dozens of attempts to get clean had previously failed. After doctors, psychologists, and social workers had insisted that the strength to get off drugs had to come from within, a strength that neither of them believed they had. But now their friend Mike had made it out thanks to his inner strength, and that gave Adam and my mother hope to do the same. My stepfather got clean after more than 2 decades as an addict, while my mother beat a deep depression that had taken her to the verge of suicide on several occasions. They had felt emptiness, sadness, and despair, but now they were filled with love and security. Unfortunately, not everyone around them was as lucky. Many of their friends died as a result of their addiction. At just 39 years old, my mother died of cancer. Throughout her life, she defeated monsters and demons, all the while showing the people close to her an unbelievable amount of love. In the middle of the drug swamp I grew up in, I had a beautiful childhood, and for that, I have her alone to thank.